Welcome back to a new video. It is time to do the reading journal for November, which is always exciting. Please excuse the very pale lighting. I am still working out some kinks on this filming setup. I got a new camera and, well, I need to sort out the lighting. But in general, I think the picture is better, so improvements. Anyways, I am starting off by putting down a picture of a lighthouse on the sea. This is from a calendar that I got for free a while back. It is meant to be for September, I think, but I really like the picture, so we're going with it for November. Who cares? Starting off, as usual, we are putting in the stats for the month. The TBR started at 43 books and I ended at 34, which is, I think, a vast improvement, and the fact that I am down to 34 books on my TBR is really exciting. Most of these are digital. I'm also getting that itch to go buy a bunch more or borrow a bunch more or whatever, but it's very exciting. Anyways, I read 14 books this month. I DNF'd 7. I acquired 6. Some of these were not for TBR. And then the I destashed 2 books as I was reorganizing my bookshelves. So and now we're just going to fill in the books read section. I have a few books on here that are part of a series, so I'm just going to combine those into a series for the little review pages that I do. But most of these were physical books, except I think there was one ebook, and I want that book in physical copy. So it was a pretty solid month for physical books, and I think in general that's a trend that I have been noticing. I really like reading physical books more than I like reading digital books. It's just tactile, and I focus a lot better on a physical book than an ebook. I mean, ebooks are convenient and great, but physical books, I think, are my favorite. And audiobooks. I love audiobooks. I'm the slowest listener ever. It's been a year almost, and I'm still working on one, so. Alright, with the cover page done, it is now time to move into the book review spread sections. I will be glad in 2026 to move into the pre-printed book review version because I really don't care to set these up. Oddly enough, I can do my bullet journaling no problem every month. The reading journal, on the other hand, just for some reason, it feels a lot more difficult. Probably because I don't have decorations for everything. There were a few books in here where I would really have loved a sword sticker, but just little things like that. It just doesn't feel coherent to me. Anyways, I'm excited for the pre-printed reading journal. Now let's get on to the reviews of the books that I read. I started off with Louise Penny's newest book, The Black Wolf. I love her writing. I think she does an excellent job at creating wonderful characters who feel so realistic and so deep, and her writing is so smooth and it pulls you along, and so her books will always be something I enjoy reading. However, the reason this one only got 4 stars from me was because it felt like it was a little too large scale. The Armand Gamache books have, in my experience, been a bit slower and more thoughtful, and they're very methodical, well thought out, and this one felt more like throwing these intellectual, thoughtful characters into an action movie, which was bizarre. I mean, it all made sense in context of the story, but it felt a bit too big, I think. Also, there were a few too many point of view characters in this book for some reason, but I love the characters, so that's neither here nor there. The next book I read was back into the fantasy genre, surprise, surprise, with The Hedge Witch of Foxhall by Anna Bright. This is a YA adventure about restoring magic to Wales, I guess. Yeah, it is Wales, even if it is, fantasy world. I loved the world building and the lore that was involved. I loved the characters and the magic. It was very fun, and I'm really terrible at Welsh, so I won't even try to pronounce some of these names and things, but I thought it was a very entertaining book. I liked the adventure, I liked the story. My only complaint is that I'm just not a huge love triangle fan, and granted, this wasn't like a proper love triangle. It was just, yeah, I mean, it was executed better than a lot of others, but it was still trying to be a love triangle, and I just can't be bothered. So a solid 4 stars from me. The next book I read was The Fire in the Glass by Jacqueline Benson. This is the first book in the London Charismatics series, and it had been on my TBR for... Well, we're not going to actually talk about how long it's been on my TBR. I don't want to know the exact date, but it's been a very long time, like multiple years. Anyways, I have been meaning to read this book for absolute ages, and in my working through my TBR, I finally got around to it, and I should have read it a whole lot sooner. It was a very nice book. The world was, it's, 1914 London, so it's a familiar world, very much magical realism style, but oh, the characters, they are just so well done. And Strangford, he was my favorite out of the whole lot, even including the main character. Okay, now I liked her too. But anyways, he was just so dark and tormented and soft and squishy, and I loved him so much. Anyways, this book was excellently well done. I loved the darker themes and the way the story was woven together, and it just really nice, and I really want to read the rest of the series, which is a problem because I'm trying to reduce my TBR, not to add to it. It's why I haven't actually gotten the other books yet. Oh well. The next book I read was Twice by Mitch Albom. This is his newest book. It's more romance than some of his other books, but it's definitely a drama as well. Basically, the premise is that the main character can do anything twice, except fall in love. And I thought it was a very nice story. I liked the kind of... I want to call it a non-linear narrative, but it wasn't really, because everything did happen linearly, even if the character was doing some things over again. So it all made sense. But it didn't feel like it was a proper linear A to B to C narrative, and I thought it was very clever and very well done, and I liked the ending. It was very sweet. A nice book. Solid 4 stars from me. And if you're ever wondering why I don't keep track of what genres I read, it's because 90% of the books that I read are fantasy. I'll read just about any genre, but most of them are fantasy, so don't be surprised when I don't do a genre wrap-up at the end of the year. The next book I read was Just Stab Me Now. Ooh, that's hard to say. Just Stab Me Now by Jill Barrett. This I found through the TikTok video series that she does. If you haven't seen them, they are just so clever and funny and entertaining. It's an author who is trying to wrangle her characters into order, and they're not cooperating. And then she wrote a book about it, and I think it was a very entertaining book. I liked the premise, I liked the frame story, and I liked the characters a lot. I think the writing was nice. There were definitely comedic bits mixed with dramatic bits, but the story itself, not the frame story with the author, but the characters within that story, I don't know how to describe that, they felt a little, or the story itself, it just felt, I don't know, not predictable, but also kind of predictable. I didn't know precisely exactly what was going to happen, but I could figure it out. It wasn't hard, and it didn't grab me as much as I was expecting. So this one got a 3.75 stars from me. The next book, well, books, I'm putting this together because it is a duology. This is A River Enchanted and A Fire Endless by Rebecca Ross, the Cadence duology. I don't remember what the duology is called, but I have been meaning to read A Fire Endless for the longest time. I have had A River Enchanted on my shelf. I read it, I loved it, I thought it was great, and then totally forgot that it was part of a duology, and it just kind of sat there until a couple months back, and I said, oh, wait a second, there's another book, and I need to read it. So, yeah. Anyways, I did read A River Enchanted again because I had completely forgotten everything, and I loved it again. Always fun. I really like Rebecca Ross's writing. It's very smooth and lyrical, and it just kind of pulls you along very nicely. A Fire Endless, I think, was a delightful conclusion to the duology. It was very dramatic. I was hoping for a bit more in the way of music, but we got kind of magic instead, and you know what? I'm okay with that. I think it was very well done. I liked the ending. I was prepared for more poignancy, but I think it ended just perfectly. So, very pleased with this duology. 5 stars. The next book I read was Arrow of Fortune by Jacqueline Benson. This is the 3rd book in her Raiders of the Arcana series, which technically takes place about 20 years before the London Charismatic series. There are definitely parallels between the series now that I am starting to read the other one, but this one is more fun, adventure, and just, a romping good time. I liked this series quite a bit, and I think this book was a very nice continuation of the series. The adventure was fun. I loved the history and the different culture. This one is Nandapur in India, which I think was very interesting, and the romance was very cute and delightful, and I loved it, as expected. And then my only complaint, though, was that there's a unit of weight called a stone, commonly used in the UK, and that weight is equivalent to 14 pounds. Now, the author, who does an exceptional job researching all of the cultural bits and pieces, claimed it was 20 pounds, or approximate thereof, and it's a teeny tiny detail. It doesn't matter at all in the story or the grand scheme of things or anything, but it just irked me the tiniest bit, so I took off a 1/4 star, so it only got 4.75 instead of 5 stars. Yes, I'm a little picky. The next book I read was The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodges, and absolutely marvelous book. Oh my. I mean, I love a mystery, and I love a fantasy, and I love when you get a fantasy mixed with a mystery, but this book, it was so rich. The world building was stunning. The lore was so well crafted. I loved the way that the ravens kind of talked over the story and around the story, and it was just so well done. The characters, Nima, she was fantastic. fantastically well written. I loved her so much, and all of the twists and turns. I didn't see a couple of them coming, and I didn't mind in the slightest. Sometimes that bothers me if it doesn't feel like it fits, but this was perfectly well done, and I am desperately excited for book 2. So a 5-star from me on this wonderful mystery. It's a big book, so be prepared when you're getting into it, but it's so good. The next book I read was A Fire in the Sky, and I was really hoping I would like this book. It had dragons in it, and on the cover, and I'm a sucker for a good dragon book. And this was not a good dragon book. I mean, it was fine. This story was, the romance, political marriage, and trying to save family, and so on and so forth. And it was interesting, although honestly there was a lot more spice than I think the story needed. And it was kind of unnecessary in parts, and the relationship was basically, hey, I find you physically attractive. And that was about it. Until the very end, and then it's like, oh no, I can't live without you. It was fine. It was average. I will not be continuing the series. Bit disappointed in that one. 3 stars. The next book I read was Dragon Song by Anne McCaffrey. This is a reread for me. This is one of those comfort reads that you go to when you're going, the last book I read wasn't great, and I'm not really sure I want to go read something new. I just want something comfortable and familiar. And so I read the first book of the Harper Hall trilogy. I could have read the rest of the books, but I was eager to kind of reread some other stuff too, so I did. First, though, I read The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I'm reading this as a buddy read with a friend of mine. We're doing a nonfiction series right now, and this was very entertaining. I can't believe I've never read this before. It's very much, it's about warfare, how to succeed in war. But also it can be applied to things like business, which is kind of terrifying, and life in general, which is also terrifying, but less so. And I thought it was very entertaining. There were definitely bits like finding the higher ground and standing on the sunward side of the hill that were a bit less than relevant. But generally speaking, I thought it was a very entertaining book. And I shall definitely be using it in my fantasy writing. No questions. The next books that I read were the Scholomance trilogy books. Now, technically, I only read the first 2, A Deadly Education and The Last Graduate, in November. I finished the Golden Enclaves on the first day of December, but I'm including them in the November review spread because it makes sense to put them all together, even if I will be counting the third book as the first book read in December. Anyways, this is a reread. I love these books so much. They are absolutely my favorite books of the year, no question. Even though I haven't gotten through December, I love them. And they're 5 stars, 6 stars, honestly. They are books that I constantly think about. Alright, let's go back and fill in the stats. This is my bookshelf challenge. I will not be getting to 200 books this year, but you know what? I am okay with that. I don't really mind. I'm getting pretty close, though. It's very exciting. Still haven't finished my alphabet. Probably won't. Don't really care. Filling in my book bracket, The Raven Scholar, because I don't include rereads, was my favorite book of the month. And then going in and doing award winner, because Dragon Song was definitely one of those. And I knew there was something I was missing. Yes, my numbers page. I thought I hadn't read any ebooks, but no, it turns out I did. I went back and fixed it where I wrote in 0 ebooks, I read 1 ebook. And so let's have a look at November. 14 books read, several of them rereads, most of them physical, an absolutely stellar month for books, minus A Fire in the Sky, which was fine, I guess. Anyways, a great month for reading, and I'm excited to get into December. As you can see, I can really only fit about 1 more month of books in here. This poor notebook is reaching the end of its lifespan, but you know what? It served me well. Happy reading!